use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and a member of the PsychArmor team will reach out to assist you. These virtual events will also be recorded, and these will be posted to PsychArmor's website and YouTube channel. So bringing us into the conversation at hand, caring for a veteran through the end of life is a significant journey. And we're here to provide caregivers and loved ones with the resources they need to navigate this journey with confidence and compassion. Today, we will explore the importance of end-of-life care for veterans and examine the need for open and honest communication between caregivers and their loved ones. We will also share tools and resources to help navigate this journey. Today, we are joined by the amazing Dr. Qwynn Galloway-Salazar to discuss this important yet often overlooked topic. Dr. Salazar is a veteran of the United States Army and spouse to a retired combat veteran. Her work has spanned the last 20 years, supporting our nation's military and veteran communities. As the founder of In Their Honor LLC, Qwynn serves as an end-of-life doula and trainer. So welcome again, everybody who is joining us. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Qwynn, for joining us today. And can you start us off by sharing what an end-of-life doula is and how you became involved in end-of-life care for veterans?
Absolutely, Shaina. It is so amazing to be here with conversations with caregivers. So even before I even kick off into how I got into this space, I want to individually, all 53, I think we're at 54 right now, attendees that are in this virtual room. I want to say thank you. Thank you for journeying with us today and getting ready to explore a conversation that so many really choose, or rather not choose, but have a really difficult time talking about. So if you're here in this space, thank you. I am sending you a massive virtual hug. Thank you for being here. So to answer your question, what is an end-of-life doula? I get this question so many times, right? And in short,
it was a new topic. I had not heard of it until I first connected with you. That was a new one. I know about, doulas in, birth and, new children entering this world, but I had not heard of end-of-life doulas. Absolutely. And that was a new concept.
Yeah. So you think about the concept of a birth doula, and you're starting at the beginning of life, and then you take an end-of-life doula and you're focusing on that journey towards the end of life and supports through the end of life. And then you have what is a doula, an end-of-life doula who provides non-medical supports, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, comfort care, joining a dying person and their loved ones in companionship. That's the space where you find end-of-life doulas doing just amazing work to support hospice organizations, to support palliative care organizations, or support veterans or the dying in their communities. And so you also asked me, how did I become an end-of-life doula?
Yeah, how did you choose this journey? Because, it does not sound like an easy career path to take. There's a lot of strong and difficult emotions, also traversing and giving space to and sharing grief with those that you support and serve. How did you get into this, and how, and also in end-of-life care for veterans in particular?
Yes. So as you shared, I am an Army veteran and I'm a spouse to a combat retired veteran. I started this journey in 2001 when I first put this uniform on. And throughout the last 2023, right? So throughout the last, I gotta catch these years, the last 2 decades, it's been this thing of journeying with service members, veterans, and communities on exploring how their military service impacts their lives, right? So I've done work in the behavioral health space for the majority of my career, and I tapped into suicide prevention as well. And as I was journeying through those spaces, back in 2021, a question came up in my mind, and the question was, For those that have served in our armed forces, how does their military experiences show back up throughout the course of their life, specifically at the end of their life? So for those who have experienced traumas, who have diagnoses of post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries, military sexual traumas, the invisible and visible wounds, right? How do those things show up? And as a society, how do we show up and hold space for our veterans, for their caregivers and loved ones?
I love that you brought up society, because it really does. I mean, I'm a big proponent of it takes the village, right? But then it also kind of takes away, the entirety of the burden from the caregiver, who should not be shouldering alone. And how do we as a society embrace the caregiver and the care recipient who is needing care in their end of life journey?
Absolutely. We all have a role. So often we see veterans in our communities and we say, thank you, right? We want to thank them for their service, but let's also make sure that thank you extends throughout the continuum of life, where we're also showing up in various ways. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those ways when veterans and their caregivers are journeying to the end of life. So in 2021, I was having these amazing conversations with one of my mentors who at that time had been diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And I remember saying to her, I have been doing the work of behavioral health and suicide prevention for the last 2 decades. And now all of a sudden my journey is taking a turn and I'm walking into this end of life space and I have no idea what this looks like or what I'm doing, but I'm here. And
Caregivers, does this sound familiar?
Right? I felt alone. And at the same time, I was also starting my caregiver journey with my dad. And so I will never forget her words to me were, all those who wander, Qwynn, are not lost. And the last 2 decades of your career has brought you to this point. And prior to her passing, she asked me to promise her that I would do all that I can to raise awareness of the unique experiences faced by veterans and their caregivers through the end of life. So here I am on this journey. Here I am on this quest to fulfill my promise that I will educate and raise awareness, whether it's our communities, our healthcare providers, and as we're sitting here today with our caregivers.
Wow, that is incredible. And here you are very much fulfilling that promise in a very big way. So thank you for your continued dedication, and for your leadership in this space, also in guiding us in, not only how do we best support, as a community, how do we best support our caregivers, how do we best support the care recipients, but how do we do it in a culturally appropriate way, and how do we also address the emotional needs as well, not just the logistics of end of life care, which I think is just as important, if not more. Absolutely. I mean, I'm biased, social worker over here. And, going into that, it's a difficult time, as you spoke on the difficulty entering into this area, that it was, it's isolating, it's also intimidating, you don't know where to start, and I feel like this may be a feeling that resonates deeply with caregivers, and also the overwhelm of information that they receive, toward this end of life journey, and I would love to first start with, how do caregivers initiate and approach not only this topic, but how do they approach these conversations with their veteran about their wishes for end of life care? And we'll start with that, and then I'll throw some more questions your way, maybe even a few curveballs.
That's fine. Let's do it. First and foremost, hold this space and acknowledge your emotions. right? Acknowledge the range of emotions, whether it is from fear to relief. It's okay to acknowledge all of your emotions as you are on this journey. For some who have never been in the space of death and dying, and this is your first experience, there may be a great deal of fear associated. For some caregivers who have been caregiving for quite some time, and I just want to be transparent and vulnerable as I say this, you may have been witnessing your loved ones suffer for quite some time. And I've had family members say to me, Qwynn, is it okay to feel this sense of relief? Because I no longer want my husband to suffer anymore. And in all honesty, it is okay to acknowledge that emotion of relief because you don't want to see that long-term suffering continue. So I would first say acknowledge your emotions. Secondly, I would say, and I've had this conversation with several veterans at the end of their lives where their concern, everyone, is you, the caregiver. Their concern is, how are you going to manage throughout this journey? How are you going to be okay once they transition? So I would say without a doubt, you may be afraid that having this discussion may upset them or worry them, but on the opposite end, it may be such a relief for them that you're wanting to be empowered and have this conversation with them. Because they may be afraid to broach the topic with you. So I would say start those conversations. They are difficult. Even as we think about our own lived experiences, having conversations about death and dying are not easy. They don't come natural, but start small and ask questions about your veterans' feelings, right? What are their feelings related to what's happening to them at this point? And one tip that I can say that's a winner is actively listen.
Yeah. That's a biggie.
As humans, we're so wanting to have a quick response, but sit and listen, because they may be sharing some things with you that they've never shared before. And this is that opportune time to allow them to share with you whatever it is that's on their heart. And did you ask me about wishes, right? Those end of life wishes.
Well, and how do you, and you've kind of already started answering this question, and how do we make these conversations as comfortable and productive as possible? I know, just as, we were talking, but also just the natural trepidation, the natural unease that we may have in entering these difficult conversations, not knowing if the service member, if our veteran is, going to be receptive, if this is going to, cause any, emotional harm. And you've already, illustrated a few items that, really support making this a comfortable and supportive environment, and how caregivers can react and reinforce, these behaviors of sharing this information and engaging in this dialogue. Do you have any additional advice on making these conversations as comfortable as possible?
Yeah, if you can possibly set the environment, right? If your veteran is still in the space where they can, go out for a walk, or if there is an accessibility challenge, if you all can sit on a deck or somewhere where there's fresh air. There may be a room in your home that there's so many amazing memories. Like in my home, it's the dining room, right? You may want to have conversations, if it's possible, in the dining room. So I would say for sure, be able to set that environment, right? Where it's a safe space for your veteran to share, but also a safe space for you to receive, but for you to also share. So setting that environment is really important in starting to have those conversations. And also know that those conversations starting off may not be like an hour-long conversation, right? It may be a 5-minute conversation just to get those thoughts flowing.
Yeah.
And what I would say is regularly check in and build upon those conversations. And if you can document them so that you are building a plan, so to speak, for
Yeah.
your loved one and how they want their wishes to be carried out.
That leads me to another question, probably one that I may have asked first, but I feel like it also really complements, this discussion of this preparation and gaining the information needed to support the veteran's wishes during this end of life journey. And also identifying what you as a caregiver need in order to prepare for this, because it's a very difficult time for both parties, for everyone. Caregivers, as you noted earlier, can feel, these mixed emotions and, need to give themselves that permission and that space to experience these mixed emotions of grief, of ambiguous loss, all of these different things that are kind of confusing because you still have your loved one there, but you're also losing pieces of your loved one through this journey and are, preparing yourself as well. And then that doesn't even include the, logistics associated with preparing for this journey, right? So in that, what advice would you give caregivers, just starting out in this journey, and how they can best prepare themselves for this road ahead? Would you recommend that they make a list of preparations before they engage in this conversation or with their veteran? Or do you think that, this conversation with their veteran and broaching this topic with them can help lead that caregiver into a thoughtful path forward in how they prepare and determine next steps?
Yeah, so I would definitely say,
Told you there'd be a
I
curveball.
know, right? Like, I'm like, that's a loaded one. What I would definitely say is have the opportunity to prepare, but prepare from a place of compassion, right? So we don't want to have this bullet pointed checklist of these are the questions that I need to ask one by one, right? But have some ideas, right? You may say, okay, I know that we may need an advanced care directive, right, in place. Do we have a will in place? What are, you may ask your veteran questions related to how do you want us to manage your pain, right? How do you want us, if there's a spiritual preference, how do you want us to manage that? One of the key questions that I love to ask is what matters most to you in the end, right?
Wow.
What matters to you? And then the other important piece is we hear the term tribe so much, but I'm going to use the word tribe on this Monday.
Yes.
Know where your tribe is, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there are people in the wing that quite honestly want to support your family as much as possible, but they sometimes just don't know how. So look around your home. If you realize that you have 3 children that haven't been to the park in a while, right? You may ask your next door neighbor, hey, while you're going to the park with your kids, do you mind taking my kids as well, right? If you know that cooking is a challenge, hey, can you handle Friday's pizza, Chinese, vegan, whatever it is that you enjoy eating? But really think about who's a part of your tribe that you can call and say, I need support. But the other piece, while you're working on your checklist of advanced care planning and advanced directives and wills and your tribe, the other piece that I have to, if there's nothing that you take this piece. Remember that your veteran is still living while they're dying. And so however you can make memories along the way, spending time, holding hands, telling stories, making memories, ensure you do those things. One of the most challenging things I've ever heard a loved one say is, as my veteran was dying, I also forgot he was still living. And I can't get those moments back. So remember, they are still living while they're dying. And as long as they have breath, find ways. And if you need ways, don't hesitate to reach out to me and to say, hey, Qwynn, what are some things that we can do?
Concrete steps to ensure.
Things that we can do to just not focus on the dying piece, but also ensure that we're focusing on the fact that your veteran is still living.
That would be incredible. That hit because that is something that I think people get so caught up in the steps, the processes, the journey toward the end point that they do not recognize the importance, significance, and need to create those memories and create that community of support. And, to also kind of move into these concrete steps, as we engage with other family members, because there's always, other family members, you're going to pop out from the woodwork. Everybody's going to have opinions, right? But also, knowing that you have your veteran at, the center of, your heart and your planning and, what they need, what you need as the caregiver, what your children may need, right? What kinds of, concrete steps to can caregivers take to ensure that their veterans' wishes for end of life care, that their families' wishes, in this end of life care journey are not only honored, but how do they communicate that to these other family members, community members, loved ones, friends, to ensure that everybody remains on the same page and is supportive and respectful of this, of these needs. And
yeah, so after the conversations start happening, you definitely want to document them. If the illustrious PsychArmor team can drop in, there's a document called Planning Your Legacy, and it's a VA guide, and it's a toolkit, it's a starter, and it starts laying out a framework of all the important things that you want your veteran to start documenting, right? So you want to start having these conversations on, where's the will? Who are the dependents? Where are all of the important documents that are needed during this leg of the journey? But as you're documenting these things, you also want to have open conversations with loved ones and family members that are external to the household, right? Because you want to ensure that they're respecting the wishes. So it's important to say, Uncle Joe really doesn't want to be resuscitated, right? Like he's expressed that, he's made that really clear, and we have to, it's in writing, and we have to stand firm in respecting his wishes, right? So you want to make sure that the wishes are in writing so that all family members can honor that.
Yeah.
And in the event
that a little bit less burden on the caregiver too, because unfortunately it feels like it places yet another burden on the caregiver to, kind of be the gatekeeper, to be the person who's policing this and ensuring that people are reinforcing what their loved one wants and needs.
Yeah. And that's also a good way to have a tribe member come into play, right? Who is that dominant force in your tribe that says, okay, this is what the veteran wants, and we're going to respect their wishes, right?
Find your allies.
Find your allies, right? Find your allies in this space. And you want to be able to say, give that family member or that loved one the opportunity to state their piece. But at the end of the day, we have to honor those wishes. So, we want to validate their thoughts and say, okay, we hear you, But at the
Mhm.
same time, at the end of the day, these are the wishes of that veteran. Another piece that's important too is in the space where that veteran is in the home, you may
Mhm.
want to have a picture frame that says these are their wishes, right? It may be that veterans' wishes are for visitors who come in, no more than 2 or 3 visitors at a time. That
Wow.
veteran may say, okay, if you come in, I'd like for you to take your shoes off. If you come in, I'd like for you to tell me a story. So it's really as many places as you can possibly have their wishes, have
Yeah.
their wishes. And in that frame, you don't have to put like their medical pieces,
Right. Right.
station pieces of, you know, what that veteran would like in terms of that visiting piece, right?
Yeah. It gives them, and I think that's also very supportive for, those who enter the home, those family members, those friends, loved ones who want to show their support and love,
Yeah.
during this phase in their journey. I think that is a very helpful tool for them, and something that I would say would likely be appreciated, so that they know and they feel informed, and it also may make it a less daunting or intimidating experience,
Mhm.
because many people do feel discomfort
Yes.
um, in death and dying. So I've never heard that, and I think that's a very, very cool tool to be able to use, and also further solidify, hey, this is how it is.
And
I'm
this,
not making the rules, they're on the wall.
right. And as you go, as the process continues, revisit them,
Yeah,
right? Revisit those wishes. And it may mean creating a new frame, right? It may mean adding some to those directives, to those plans, those end of life plans. And so you want to revisit them as often as possible because things change
yeah.
along the journey. And just to honor that veteran, you want to make sure that you're aware and you're abreast to still honor their wishes.
And to that point, it really kind of reinforces the need for, that flexibility, the mindset, a flexible mindset, right? Because there are going to be changes, changes in ability, changes in wishes, new things may pop up. So maintaining that flexibility, for yourself, so that you're ready and prepared and welcoming of these new changes rather than, oh gosh, overwhelm, right?
Mhm. And there's something else, and I'm gonna go off the cusp for a second, like you,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's
yes.
Monday. Let's do this.
It's
But
Monday, you guys. We're here
let's
for it.
let's take that a step. Let's go into the emotional support for that
Yeah.
veteran.
Yes.
For many of us who have served, we have also experienced unique points in our lives that can cause um, a varied degree of emotions toward the end of life. And so for some of our veterans, that may show up as grief, that may show up as unfinished business, that may show up as regrets, that may show up as guilt. And it may also show up as a need for forgiveness. And so if you know and you're seeing your veteran express some stories or some events that happened while they were in service, please don't hesitate to reach out to your social worker that's assigned to your team. If there's a need for a chaplain to be involved, please do that. Um, I recall maybe about 2 months ago, I had another doula that's a colleague of mine share with me that her uncle was actively dying, but she felt that there was still some stuff there with him in terms of residual, right? In terms of things that happened when he was in combat. And I thought in my head, well, it would be great to just send a voice piece to that family and ask for forgiveness and just share a piece on how important it is for forgiveness towards the end of life. and within 48 hours, he passed away. And so sometimes we have our veterans who are simply holding on because they want to know that they've been forgiven for whatever acts that have happened in their life, but they also want to know that they've been loved. So as we're preparing that space, also remember those pieces of regrets, unfinished business, grief, shame, the power of forgiveness, and the power of love.
Wow. That's deep, and it is just really, it goes toward that, the unique circumstances surrounding the military and veteran community, the need for that cultural competence or cultural humility, that understanding that there may be these unique factors associated with this process. And I want to throw another curveball at you. I apologize, but come on, you knew these would be coming. I both, with family members, with my grandfather, during his, end of life journey, I found that he was talking more about his experiences in the military. And it was something that we had not seen him do with just any old member of the family or community, but that he really fixated on, sharing these experiences with other veterans.
Absolutely.
And what do you think about that? I've seen that not only with my own grandfather, my ex-husband's grandfather, finding that shared experience, that camaraderie, that connection that service members have, and that comfort. Is that something that plays a role in this? Is that something that can potentially support the caregiver and the service member during this end of life journey? And how do you find, I imagine, a lot of us do have veterans in our lives that we can call upon, but is that something that people can seek out to help them as they, to help facilitate this process?
Oh, now that curveball is dynamic. So we do know that camaraderie plays a huge role through the end of life. There is this bond. It doesn't, what I have found is it doesn't matter what era you've served in, right? It's this thing of knowing that you served and you have a similar cultural experience related to the military where you understand some of my lingo, some of the acronyms that I may use, some of the dark humor that I may use, and you can sit in that space with me. And so there in several hospice organizations, they have programs called No Veterans Die Alone, right? Or they have the We Honor Veterans program where you can find volunteers in the community that can show up and hold that space with that veteran. Your local veteran service organizations, so your American Legions, your VFWs can also be a great place to partner and say, hey, my loved one served in OEF, OIF, OND, right? And really could use someone to come in and just spend time. What we know is that some of these experiences where this time is spent, there are things that bubble up to the top that family members never even knew happened in service. But simply because you took another veteran and you paired that veteran with that veteran that's facing end of life, there's so much that comes out towards the end of life. I had the opportunity to journey alongside a Korean War veteran. And here I am, right? An OEF veteran. And here I am, this whole piece of intergenerational connection was just magnificent because he taught me so much that was going on during the time he served and during the time when he came home. And it was the forgotten war, So we have to
Mhm.
also take into consideration that each war generation, each era had a different experience when it came to reacclimating into society, right? So it's
Absolutely.
important that our volunteers have a little understanding of what were things like when World War II veterans came home, Korean War, uh, Vietnam, peacetime, and so on, and being able to just have a veteran from a different era show up. You may be able to find a battle buddy that your veteran served with, and they have the time to share old stories and to heal some wounds, to find ways to get that closure, to find ways to be forgiven or to forgive some of the things that they left on the combat field or here on our soil.
And this actually, brings me to a question as, a caregiver, especially as these, you know, unknown, unique stories, circumstances, new information, that may present itself.
Mhm.
How can caregivers prioritize their self-care and their own, emotional support during this journey, as not only the caregiver, providing that informal family care, but also as they learn about this new information, which, may carry its own, need for its own emotional components, right? How can caregivers utilize this information, but also protect themselves, support their own well-being, and prioritize their self-care during this time?
Yeah, there is no way if your tank is empty and it's depleted, it's going to impact the care that you provide to your veteran.
Absolutely.
So, going back to that tribe, going back to building your support system early on and knowing, hey, who can I phone when I need a moment to get outside, when I need a moment to go and do yoga or practice mindfulness. In terms of prioritizing the needs of your veteran, you also have to make sure to prioritize your needs and how to maintain your self-care. So you have to figure out a way to make it a routine activity throughout the
Mhm.
course of your day. Even if it's 15 minutes where you have the opportunity to get out and just do something for you, it'll help, right? It
Without guilt.
without
Without
guilt,
guilt.
without guilt. Because I'm going to remind you, your veteran is primarily concerned about you and how you're faring through this journey. So lean on your ladder holders, your tribe, your family, your loved ones, those that are in your community that can show up and give you moments of respite, right? Use those moments of respite to care for yourself. You're going to need it.
Yes, thank you. And that brings me to a really, important question for our communities, for those who can circle around these caregivers and provide that support. I know that, many caregivers experience difficulties in finding, in-home care or respite opportunities, just due to, unfortunately, these national shortages in care providers, right? So it really does require us as a village, as a tribe, as a community to step up and really, encircle the caregiver and the care recipient, the veteran, in support and to show up. How can we as a community better support caregivers providing end of life care for veterans, um, and what roles can we play?
Yeah. So it's awesome. I think about technology, how far technology has advanced us as a society. But I also think about 100 years ago where we cared for our own dying, right? And I find myself in a place of how do we merge those two worlds? So right in the communities where we live, where we play, where we eat, where we do all the things, community members and family members want to show up and do things to support caregivers. As caregivers, you have to allow yourself that space to be vulnerable and transparent, to say, yes, I will take the freaking pizza on a Friday night.
Accept
right?
it. Accept the pizza.
Right. Yes, I can use
Accept the lasagna. Accept the help.
Right? Accept the neighbor that says, I'm willing to mow your lawn, or I'm willing to water your lawn. Accept it. If you're in a faith-based organization and they want to rally around and provide respite care for you, accept it. You may have people in your community or loved ones who would run the errands for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may need, there's a plethora of things that happen on a day-to-day in a household that errands can be ran on.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget about our kids, those hidden helpers. We have to remember, how can we have our tribe also be supportive to our children who may be going through their own experiences grieving, whether it's anticipatory grief or just grieving along the journey. So if you have a coach or a teacher, let the administration of the schools know we have a loved one that's dying, right? I think when we allow ourselves to share as community what death and dying looks like, we normalize this experience.
Yes.
It's a human experience, and not just a medical experience for medical providers and that veteran that's dying and their caregiver. It's an experience where we all can show up. And then you think about social media platforms. I'm journeying with a woman veteran right now that's been diagnosed with a rare form of brain cancer. And she shares her journey along the way. And what happens in that space is she has friends and family that are sending meals, that are delivering things to her, that are providing.
They have websites for this.
Yes, right? Like you don't have to do this alone.
And accept the meal delivery. Accept it.
Accept it, right? If you want the piece of cake, let your neighbor know you want the piece of cake. It's okay. Accept it.
And tell them what you need.
And tell them.
Communicate what you need.
What you need.
That is not a weakness.
It is not a weakness. It is actually a strength, right? It is a strength to say, I need help right now. All of us that are on this earth will experience an end of life experience. And it's important to show up as a compassionate community to say, I have a role in this. You have a role in this. And just because I don't live on the same street as you, I still can show my support to let you know that I see you, I'm with you. I may not have all the answers, but I'm here to hold space with you.
Hold space. And that's a big one. That is a big one, to give that space and to hold space. And it's not a tangible, here, let me hand you something, but it is something that can be more meaningful than the lasagna. And also, coming from the caregiver perspective, in so many ways, we are here as champions and advocates for our loved one, for our care recipient, for our veteran, and for others. We see the challenges that we face, and we want to help others to navigate also. So really, this normalization is an additional opportunity for us as caregivers to lead by example, to normalize, this journey for others, and to help clear the way as others follow in this journey as well.
Absolutely.
So no pressure, guys, but I know there's a few ways in which we as caregivers will throw our needs to the wayside, unfortunately, and we will focus on the needs of everybody around us, our communities, our loved ones, our care recipient. And if that is the excuse you need to trailblaze forward, you are in that way making a huge contribution to the community in normalizing this.
Normal, absolutely. This is one thing that I say all the time. I talk about the power of hope that caregivers provide. And I use
Yes.
hope as an acronym for hearing
Ooh,
other people's experiences. As caregivers, you all are in such a space where you can, when you are emotionally able to, teach us, teach
that's
us
key
how to
when you
better,
are
yeah,
available and emotionally, because protect yourself, boundaries, right?
you
When you are ready and able. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that is such a key point.
that's one of those highlight that, make that in bold, right?
Highlight, guys.
Yeah, right? Like being willing to share your story, being willing to share your experiences with others allows others to see someone else's experiences and say, I can see myself in that, or I need something different. Also, sharing your stories provides implications and provides a way for the future for providers, right? To provide better care to your loved ones. So as it permits, as you feel that you're willing to share,
Yeah.
as often as possible, as often as you can, let people like me, let people like Shaina, let people like folks at the PsychArmor know, what can we do to better support you as a caregiver?
Yes.
Because we can't do it all ourselves and say we have all the thoughts in our heads because we have all of these experiences. We know that there are so many individual experiences
Mhm.
that we have to be able to offer this wide variety of a menu to provide care and support.
Thank you. That is an incredibly impactful and important point. And that and again, I'm going to say it, it takes a village, and we need to know what the issues folks are facing. What are the issues folks are facing? Because there are so many different ways in which culture, what condition you're, dealing with may, and the relationship between yourself and your care recipient. So many factors have an impact in how you navigate this process. So thank you. That's another highlight, guys. Let's highlight this one.
Yeah.
Um,
And
you know,
another piece, I'm sorry, Shane, another piece to that
yeah,
is, just because I come from one set of the tracks per se, just because I'm from an urban area and you're from a rural area, right? Like there is a way that we can meet in the middle to show that we are truly connected
yeah,
because are all, as human, we are all interconnected in this space. And the best way that we can show up is by learning from one another. You know, I we have this broad picture of military culture and cultural competency, but being willing to bring that cultural humility, that desire to want to learn from that caregiver or that loved one or that veteran what their experiences are, right? That's the way that we all are connected, right? By showing up and saying, how can I learn from your experience,
mhm.
right? I don't need to know every little aspect of military culture, but how can I show up for you, knowing that you do have this unique experience? How can I show up? What can I glean? What can I learn? And how can I be of best support to meet your needs?
Approach with an open mind
And an open heart.
and an open heart. Yes. Wow, powerful. On that note, we have questions coming in, and I have so many more questions too, but I really do want to get into some of these questions from our audience members, and also would like to identify, various tools and resources. Um, uh, so I'm thinking, in our follow up, we'll be able to provide, a good tangible list of resources and tools and supports available for our caregivers as we come to the end of our session today, but also concepts and ideas on how we can honor and remember
Mhm.
the veteran and
Yeah.
their end of life journey. Um, and how they find closure and healing after their loved one has passed away. So I think there's a lot more to be said on this. I think that goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway. But moving on to questions from, those who have joined us today, and some really great questions here. So some more curveballs. Let's get into it. These are great ones. So, we mentioned children, and their needs in this process. And often, unfortunately, just as this is an often overlooked topic, they are also often overlooked, and their needs, right? Unfortunately. So one of our one of those, joining us today asked, how do we want to protect our children?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. This is life according to Qwynn. I think it's very important to have brave conversations with your children according to their age.
Mm-hmm.
Ensure conversations are age appropriate.
Yeah.
I would advise that if we have this false sense of reality, or we share with our children that, the veteran is going to get better and we know what the prognosis is, we may do more harm than good. So really find ways to approach that situation and approach the conversation with your child as it relates to their age and their development, right? You may find books. I know there's a book, I think it's called The Kissing Hands, right? There's different books that you can use as a resource to start that conversation. You can read the book and then have questions like, so do you see yourself as the main character in this story? And start to weave in a conversation with that child, but also know where the resources are, right? It may be military one source. It may be talking to your care team within your hospice unit to find resources in your community. It may mean reaching out to the folks at TAPS to ensure that your child can participate in their grief camps as they journey through their grief experiences.
Right.
But I see something that just popped up, the VA's caregiver support programs. Tap into them as well to find those resources, but you want to make sure that
to your communities too.
And your community, right? And your community, tap into them so that you can provide that child with that age-specific education, awareness, and also their space to grieve, because they may not grieve the same way you grieve, depending on their age. So use your resources to be able to find them resources as they navigate this journey.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so true. It's hard. It's another, area of burden for caregivers. One more thing to look for, identify, see if it's a good resource, that can be relied upon. And in my caregiving journey, a lot of the resources that I have found have come from these reputable sources, PsychArmor, the different things available through various programs. But a lot of other incredible resources that I've found have come to me from other caregiving communities. So really tapping into these networks we have with other military caregivers who have these shared experiences, and may be able to say, hey, there was this workbook, or there was this book, there was this program by, XYZ organization that really helped my child through this. Because there's nothing like lived experience to really find these important resources.
Yeah, and when I think about resources, and these are just a few that just come to the top of my head. So please forgive me if you are an organization on here and I don't mention your organization, but just really quick, and hopefully the team at PsychArmor can pop these into the chat, I think about the work that's happening at the Red Cross, right?
Mhm.
The Military Veteran Caregiver Network, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. It talked about TAPS for a little bit. Sesame Street has a plethora of resources
They
for
do.
children that are dealing with whether it's grief or suicides, right? There's just a range of content that's provided from Sesame Street. The Rosalind Carter Caregiver Institute, they're doing amazing things. Caregiving.com is doing amazing things. PsychArmor is doing amazing things. And it's such a pleasure to partner with PsychArmor and carry this work forward to the masses. So resources are being built, and finding those pieces where you can get what you need is important, and finding that home of that organization that feeds your soul as you're navigating is important.
Thank you. And we're running
Oh,
almost on time. I know I could go on forever because there's so much to be said, and we have these incredible questions from members of our audience today. And I hope that my goal, I'm going to talk to the PsychArmor team. I would love to follow up with answers to these questions
yes.
that we have received, because they are incredibly important and they're also very good questions.
Yes.
Um,
So I will say, Shaina,
yes.
and to everyone that is here, whatever questions that have not been answered, by all means, our team at PsychArmor is going to collect them. They'll shoot them to Shaina and I. We will respond to them. And however they navigate to get those responses back to you, they will come. Please, I know this hour went, I'm sitting here,
Really,
where did this hour
where
go?
did the time go?
So please don't hesitate to shoot your questions, to put your questions into the chat. But I also want to say, also in the chat, tell us what you envision. What does the future look like? You may be a caregiver at the start of your journey. What does this look like for you? You may be a loved one that has lost your veteran. What are some things that our community and our society can do better? You may be a provider. So we want to hear from you. Share with us so that we can create robust material to articulate across this nation on how we can better support our veterans and their caregivers and loved ones through the end of life.
Thank you, Qwynn. And thank you. Yes, thank you to everybody for these very insightful questions and conversations. I can't wait to look over the chat. Thank you, Qwynn, for sharing your incredible knowledge, expertise, your spirit with us today. I really wish, gosh, at this point, let's make these 2 hours, right? But I really appreciate everybody for joining us today for this important conversation. Qwynn, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your experiences. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us for this important conversation. You're going to be seeing somewhere in this general vicinity a QR code pop up on the screen. And if you can give us a few more moments of your time to provide your feedback. This feedback is very important to us. It really helps the PsychArmor team to continuously improve upon educational programming, helps inform on future conversations with caregivers programs. We will also throw a link in the chat for those who may not have their phone handy, to point at that good old QR code. For the caregivers that are joining us today, please know that you are not alone in this journey. Many of us share these experiences, and there are resources that can support us. Please keep an eye on your inbox. We will be following up with resources and tips discussed during today's session. If you have any questions about today's conversation, you can connect with the PsychArmor team at support@psycharmor.org. And that's it for today. We really look forward to seeing you at our next Conversations with Caregivers. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look so forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.